This format is an absolutely fantastic time to be a Burning Abyss player. There are so many variants that you can play, very different decks, despite the fact that it's using the same archetype. You can be playing Sekka's Light, you can be playing Slash Draw, you can be playing with Warriors, with Beasts, with Danger, Pure, Phantom Knights, whatever you want. It does have a couple rough matchups, but overall I do think this is a very strong deck going into this next format. I personally am going to be profiling the Warrior variant today. That's what I was playing last format. I think it was the strongest variant last format. Not to say that other variants like Pure and Danger weren't also very strong, but this was my preference. So we're going to start off this format with this deck. I might end up profiling some other variants throughout the next couple of weeks. I will say, because the format officially came out today, a lot of this deck is primarily theory, so I'm going to be explaining the theory to you and how the deck might change as the format develops. Of course, I'm not psychic and therefore cannot say with 100% certainty what will be the absolute best or what the most important matchups will be, but we can get a pretty good idea based on last format and the changes on the ban list. So to start off the profile, we're going to start with our Burning Abyss monsters. 3 Skarm, 3 Farfa, 1 Seer, 1 Graph, 1 Calcab, 1 Alec, 1 Libic. I'm only playing 1 Libic. You can play 2. I know this is very popular for the Pure variant. One of the neat things about Libic is that if you have Seer in your hand, you can normal summon Libic, it'll destroy itself, special summon Seer, you can use Seer as link material, and then when Seer goes to the graveyard, it can summon Dante from the graveyard as a second link material. That's a pretty cool play. I still only play 1 though, maybe it'll go up to 2. And 1 Barbar, another very popular one, to play 2 of, but I find that in the Warrior variant we only need 1. To the non-Burning Abyss monsters, first of all, the reason that I think this variant is the best is that not only do we play BLS, we get to search BLS. I think that this card is a ridiculous boss monster. It's very good for OTKs. It gets over big monsters, which is one of the main issues Burning Abyss has. Now that Nightmare Goblin is banned, the target banish is quite a bit stronger. Not that it wasn't already very strong to begin with, and it can attack twice, clearing a lot of boards. Playing the 1 Tour Guide and the 3 Fiendish Rhino Warriors. These are sort of honorary Burning Abyss monsters. They could be on the board at the same time as Burning Abyss. Well, Fiendish Rhino Warrior can. Tour Guide can only be on the field at the same time as a Burning Abyss monster if it summoned it using its effect. But regardless, Tour Guide is very good to search off of Skarm. It's a very good second turn play. A Fiendish Rhino Warrior just sets up our 2-card Beatrice and all of that stuff. 3 Gallus the Star Beast. This is something left over from the Beast variant that Thomas Rose played. I got my invite for next WCQ with Beast Burning Abyss. I don't think Rescue Cat is that great anymore. But Gallus the Star Beast is a really strong card because it's just a free level 3 out of the hand. It fixes a lot of awkward boards where Tour Guide or Fiendish Rhino Warrior got effect Veiled or Infinite Impermanenced. I just really like the card myself. I don't think you have to run it, but I strongly recommend it. Now the thing that makes this the Warrior variant, we're playing the 3 Warriors, Destiny Hero Malicious. I don't know how much longer this card is really going to be with us. It's incredibly strong, and A Hero Lives took the hit for it in a lot of ways, so we'll see how much longer we have. We'll see how much longer this variant is playable, but while we have 3 Malicious, I think we may as well. And to complement it is the Fabled Solkius for the combo to make Isolde to search BLS and then make Beatrice all in the same turn. Finally, for the non-hand trap monsters, we have Fairy Tale Snow. I love this card. It's really good to send off of Beatrice or just to mill. I think it's especially useful late game, just kind of grindier matches. It's also quite potent in the mirror and against decks that want to extra link. is you can flip something face down. In the mirror, it makes all their Burning Abyss monsters blow up. And against link attacks, oftentimes they really need those first two monsters to make that first... they need the first two monsters to make their first link monster. So for example, in Pendulums, all they can do is get two Pendulum monsters on board. You flip one of them face down, they can't make Electromite, and they basically just end their turn. So Snow is still a very good card. Should probably be hit. Next for hand traps, 3 Ash Blossom. I think this got a lot better this format. I think towards the end of last format, it was getting quite a bit weaker. It just wasn't that good against Goki. This format, however, I think Pure Sky Striker is probably the best deck. We'll have to see. And they only have 1 Hornet Drones now, which isn't a huge hit, except a little bit in the consistency department, and it means that if they activate Engage and you Ash it, a lot of the time they actually aren't going to have a play, because that means that they have to either hard open the 1 drones or one of the 3 Ray. So instead of 6 targets that they could have opened, there's only 4. So I think Ash got a lot better in that way. Also, it hurts Trickstars quite a bit. Sky Striker Trickstar is not a deck anymore, but Pure Trickstar should still be pretty decent. It's good against that. A few other good matchups, with those some of the notable ones. We're playing a lot of 2 ofs, 2 Droll, 2 Ogre, 2 Effect Veiler. Here, we'll move the Ashes out of here. And we'll just focus on these. There we go. Still kind of messy, but whatever. You guys get the idea. So, other than Ash, I kind of decided that maybe playing 2 of a bunch of them was fine. I think a lot of these cards you really don't want to open multiples of, and if you really wanted to, you could cut one of these to add the 3rd copies of the other 2. I think that's perfectly fine. I think that may be the way this deck goes in the future once it's a little more clear which hand traps are the best, but I think at the beginning of a format, especially like this one, diversifying is not a bad idea if you're going to a tournament. I think one of the big things that you can do with this deck profile, even though a lot of it is theory, is if you're playing a regional in the first few weeks, pretty much anything you play is going to be mostly theory based. So this is a great starting point. Do whatever hand traps you want. I do like these ones. I like this lineup. I was playing a lot of 2 of hand traps last format anyway. I think it's, especially for like Droll and Ogre, you don't want to open multiples, and when you play 3, you're more likely to open 2 of them, as opposed to, say, like a Droll and a Veiler. So that's an advantage. I think Ogre is going to be fairly decent this format. Against True Draco, it hits Diagram. Maybe against Altergeist because it hits Protocol. Veiler is still in here because Goki is still going to be a somewhat relevant deck, and it's also very good against Rogue. And it can hit cards like Kagari, which could just end Sky Striker's turn. Finally, we're playing the 1 Seravis. Once again, towards the end of last format, like Ash Blossom, I think it got a lot worse as Goki became more prevalent. Now that we're going to be seeing more Sky Striker, I think Seravis is going to get a lot better again. If they try to Widow Anchor your Beatrice, you can just drop Seravis and negate the Widow Anchor, and I think that's a very potent interaction in favor of Burning Abyss, being able to just say no to their out to Beatrice. I think the second one, it's in the side, might make its way into the main. That's another thing that, a Veiler and Ogre might get cut for as a second Seravis, depending on just how good and prevalent Sky Strikers are. And finally, the 3 Sekka's Lights. Yeah, I'm sorry, no card destruction. I know a lot of people are really excited for that card. I do think there are Burning Abyss variants that want to play card destruction. If you were playing Slash Draw, if you're playing Phantom Knights, if you're playing Dinosaurs, I think it could be tried in Danger. I'm not totally convinced that that's better than just playing the 3 Sekka's Lights, but it is something to experiment with. I think in this variant, Sekka's Light is still the way to go. It's an absurd card. It's Monster Reborn, and it mulligans a card, essentially. So that's pretty strong in my book. Should be in yours too. Going on to the extra deck, of course we have Beatrice, one of the most influential boss monsters of all time, and the Tudante. You never really need the 3rd. I've never missed it recently. Seems good to me. For the rest of our rank 3s, Stone King Darius outs big things in Boarload. Nightmare Shark ends games when you really shouldn't otherwise be able to. And Levier gets Seer back out of the banished pile, especially. Also, sometimes if you banish stuff off of Barbar, sometimes you want to get it back. I've done that like once. That's pretty unusual. Usually it's when they call by the grave your Seer, which should happen less frequently now that it's been semi-limited, which I think is also another general point in favor of this deck, is that it wants to play a lot of hand traps, and there are less ways to negate them now. For our Link monsters, Boral Sword. I am not playing Boarload. I generally like Boral Sword more. I think it's just a better card in this deck. It creates a lot of OTKs that Burning Abyss wouldn't otherwise have, and it can get over Boarload. So there is that. Also playing Triple Burst Dragon. I think it was a good card last format that is now a staple this format. It's incredibly strong against Sky Strikers because it prevents them from summoning back Ray when you destroy something by battle. Yeah. Honestly, if you have like Ash and then you can make Triple Burst, I think there's a lot of times where that will just end the Sky Striker matchup right there. Decode Talker, this is probably the thing most likely to be cut. So, like I've mentioned earlier, I believe I mentioned it, Altergeist is a really bad matchup for this deck. So this Decode might become a Grand Pulse, might become a second Nightmare Phoenix, it might become a Topologic Trisbania. We'll just have to see how prevalent our Altergeist actually turns out to be. It's a little unclear. A lot of people think it's going to be really good this format because everything else moved down the tier list, but we'll just have to see. Playing our 3 Nightmares, we're playing Cerberus, Phoenix, Unicorn. These are great ways to further push forward, advance your game state. Cerberus, Phoenix, and Unicorn, well, they're all great. Just out cards. Yeah, I think if you aren't going to go for the Isolde combo with Malicious, a really good thing to do with your Underclock Taker is to use it and Malicious's to jump up the ladder. Maybe go Underclock Taker into Phoenix and then into Unicorn, clearing 2 cards, and you give yourself a down arrow off of the Unicorn still. So that's pretty cool. Speaking of which, Underclock Taker, 2-card Beatrice combo. It pairs really well with BLS, reduces their monster to 0, and then you can attack over it for 3k. Isolde, and another card that's just stupidly strong. Like Malicious, I don't know how much longer we have it, but while we do, let's abuse it and search BLS. And finally our Pilgrim to summon off of Beatrice. In the side deck, like I was talking about, second Seravis, this might make its way to the main deck, but it's just a generally good card going first against Sky Strikers, just a lot of things. It's even actually pretty decent going second against Sky Strikers, because usually they'll already have a set Widow Anchor, so when they flip it, you can just drop Seravis out of your hand, and a lot of the time they can't actually stop what you're doing. The one of Shaddoll Dragon, just something for Beatrice to send that pops spells and traps. That's something that you don't have in the main deck, so this is really good against Altergeist, True Draco, Paleo, all those kinds of decks. 2 Vanity's Fiend, it's really good going first against anything that wants to special summon. It's okay against Sky Strikers. It's a little scary if you don't have Seravis because they can just Widow Anchor it. Which makes it kind of not great because a lot of the time you just sacrifice your turn to summon this basically. There are rare circumstances where you can make Beatrice and this card, but a lot of the time you're just special summoning Burning Abyss and then normal summoning it. So if they Widow Anchor it to negate it, then you just basically have nothing on board. 4 extra links. We're still playing 3 Sphere mode. I think a lot of Goki players are going to drop extra linking because Goblin is banned, and so instead they're just going to go for Trigate boards. And Evenly Matched is not very good against Trigate Wizard because they just negate it. So Trigate can't respond to Sphere mode, so we're playing 3 of it. I think it's also just generally a solid card against extra links in general. I think Vendreads might be a little more relevant this format, just because they're a deck that's still extra links. It never used Goblin in the first place, and now Goki is a little bit weaker. And I think that was kind of a bad matchup for it, because Goki was basically just a slightly better extra linking deck. Going into non-monster side deck cards, Imperial Order, 2 Fragrance, 2 Deflector. Magic Deflector, I was running at 3 last format, but I did have to cut some cards to make room for Twin Twisters, which we'll get to in a minute. So I cut this to just 2, and then we have these 3. They're just good. Stop Pendulums, slow down Sky Strikers. In the case of Order, it just stops them entirely. Sky Strikers basically just don't play anymore after that point. It's a pretty good win con. And finally, the aforementioned Twin Twisters. I hate running this card. It really sucks. But Altergeist, man. It's a brutal matchup. True Draco also isn't fantastic, and these are pretty good against Pure Trickstar. These are pretty much just like necessary evil cards this format. I really strongly recommend running them in the side deck for a lot of those trickier trap-heavy matchups where cards like Farfa don't get the job done. And with that, that is my Warrior Sekka Burning Abyss deck profile. I strongly recommend that you give many variants of Burning Abyss a try. There's a lot of them, and they're very fun. And I mean, heck, just go online and just try a bunch of stuff. That's always a good way to discover what you want to play. And if you want to take Burning Abyss to a tournament, you know, maybe you want to take this list, just as kind of a test run, whatever you want to do. You can adjust some cards as you want them to be. And with that, I guess I don't really have much else to say. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.